Somewhere beneath the streets of modern-day Mexico City, possibly under a parking lot, a subway line, or someone's backyard, there may be hundreds of tons of gold. Not a myth, not a legend, a real documented hoard that vanished in a single night in 1520 and has never been found since. Cortés had it, his men carried it. Then came the chaos, the water, the screaming, and it was gone. 500 years later, we still don't know where it is. This is the story of La Noche Triste, the saddest night, and the greatest lost treasure in human history. To understand how you lose a mountain of gold, you first have to understand how you get one. When Hernán Cortés landed on the coast of Mexico in 1519, he wasn't sent by the Spanish crown to conquer anything. He was a rogue. He burned his own ships so his men couldn't retreat. He had maybe 500 soldiers, 16 horses, and a level of audacity that borders on clinical insanity. But then something almost impossible happened. He walked into Tenochtitlan, the Aztec capital, a city built on a lake with a population larger than London at the time, and the emperor, Moctezuma II, let him in. Why? There are theories. Some say Moctezuma believed Cortés was a god returning from the east, fulfilling an ancient prophecy. Others say he was buying time. Either way, Cortés and his men walked into the most powerful city in the Americas and were given a palace to stay in. And that's when they saw it, the Aztec treasury. Room after room of gold, not coins, not bars, but raw gold. Sculptures, masks, headdresses, ornaments shaped like animals, gods, suns. Jade so green it looked like frozen water. Feathers dipped in gold dust. Turquoise mosaics set in sheets of hammered metal. Cortés wrote back to the Spanish king, and even his letters, written by a man who wanted to impress a monarch, struggled to describe what he saw. He basically said, "There are no words in Spanish for this." So what did Cortés do? He took Moctezuma hostage. Gently, diplomatically, but a hostage nonetheless. He moved him into the Spanish quarters and essentially ran the empire through him like a puppet. For months, this uneasy arrangement held. Then, everything collapsed. While Cortés was away dealing with a rival Spanish force, his lieutenant, a man named Pedro de Alvarado, massacred hundreds of Aztec nobles during a religious festival. The city exploded. By the time Cortés returned, Tenochtitlan was in open revolt. Moctezuma died, killed either by the Spanish or by his own people who saw him as a traitor, depending on who you ask. Cortés realized something with cold clarity. They needed to get out, tonight. And they needed to take the gold with them.
Here's where the story becomes almost too cinematic to believe. Cortés ordered his men to melt down as much of the treasure as possible into portable bars. Whatever they couldn't melt, they could carry. He divided it up, gave his soldiers their shares, loaded the rest onto horses, and told them, "We leave at midnight." A soldier who was there later wrote that men were stuffing gold into their boots, their armor, their belts. Some grabbed more than they could physically run with. Cortés reportedly warned them, "Don't take too much, it'll kill you." Most didn't listen. The plan was to slip quietly across one of the long causeways connecting the island city to the mainland, under cover of darkness and rain. It didn't work. They were spotted almost immediately. And then, from every direction, across the water, from boats, from rooftops, the Aztecs came. What followed was one of the most catastrophic military retreats in history. The Spanish called it La Noche Triste, the sad night, or the night of sorrows, though the grief was mostly theirs. Somewhere between 600 and 1,000 Spanish soldiers died. Most of Cortés's indigenous allies, thousands of them, also perished. Men weighed down with gold fell into the gaps of the causeway and drowned. The water ran dark in the moonlight. Horses slipped and went under. The screaming, according to survivors, didn't stop until nearly dawn. When the survivors finally staggered onto solid ground and took count of who was left, Cortés, according to one account, sat under a tree and wept. The gold was gone, almost all of it. Now, here's where the historical record gets genuinely murky and where things get interesting. Some of the treasure almost certainly sank with the soldiers who drowned. In the 1980s, construction workers digging under Mexico City unearthed gold bars that were later analyzed and dated to around 1520. The weight, the composition, the location, it all matched. That gold had been sitting under the city for 460 years. But that was only a few bars, maybe a fraction of a fraction. So where's the rest? There are three main theories, and historians still argue about them. Theory 1, it's at the bottom of the lake. Tenochtitlan was built on Lake Texcoco. Mexico City was built on top of Lake Texcoco, which was drained over centuries. The old lake bed is now under streets, buildings, and subway tunnels. The gold, hundreds of pounds, maybe more, could be sitting in the silt, 15-20 feet beneath the city. Theory 2, the Aztecs got it back. After La Noche Triste, the Aztecs controlled the causeway. They had time before Cortés regrouped and returned to conquer the city in 1521. Some historians argue that Aztec warriors recovered much of what was dropped, and that the remaining treasure was then hidden deliberately before the Spanish could take it. Theory 3, Cortés hid it. Not all of the gold was lost on the causeway. Some of it made it out with the Spanish survivors. What happened to that portion? Cortés was a meticulous man when it came to money. Some researchers believe he quietly diverted a significant portion before it ever reached the Spanish crown, and that he knew exactly where it was. None of these theories are proven. All of them are plausible.
The Spanish came back, of course. A year later, Cortés besieged Tenochtitlan for months, cut off its water and food, and finally took the city in August 1521. When it fell, one of the first things the Spanish did was torture the new Aztec emperor, a man named Cuauhtémoc, trying to find out where the gold was. The story of that interrogation is brutal and worth a second. The Spanish put Cuauhtémoc's feet in burning coals. He reportedly said nothing useful. He looked at a fellow prisoner who was also being tortured and said, and this is paraphrased from accounts, "Do you think I am on a bed of roses?" He died without giving the gold up. Which tells you something. Either he didn't know, or he knew exactly and took it to his grave. After the conquest, the Spanish conducted systematic searches. They drained sections of the lake, they interrogated survivors, they drew maps. They found some gold, enough to make the expedition profitable, but nothing approaching what Moctezuma's treasury had held. The accounting never added up. The Spanish crown was furious. They suspected Cortés of keeping some for himself, and they weren't entirely wrong to be suspicious. Cortés was being audited by the crown within years of the conquest. He spent the rest of his life in legal battles over what he owed Spain. But here's the thing that gets overlooked. The total value of what was in that treasury was never really established. Aztec wealth wasn't organized the way European wealth was. There was no ledger. The gold Cortés described was an impression, a dazzled soldier's best guess. We don't actually know how much there was, which means we don't know how much is missing. Fast forward to today, and Mexico City sits on one of the worst places in the world to do archaeology. The city is sinking, literally, because it's built on the old lake bed, and the clay compresses as groundwater is pumped out. Every year, parts of the city drop by inches. Underground, it's a tangle of colonial-era foundations, Aztec ruins, modern infrastructure, subway lines, water pipes. Archaeologists do find things. In 1978, electrical workers accidentally uncovered the Templo Mayor, the great Aztec temple, right in the middle of the city. They'd been digging a trench for power lines. What they found changed our understanding of Aztec civilization. In 2020, near the old causeway route, archaeologists found human remains and artifacts consistent with La Noche Triste, physical evidence of that exact night. The city keeps giving things up, slowly, accidentally, one construction project at a time. So what do we actually believe happened to the bulk of the treasure? Most serious historians today lean toward a combination. Much of it sank in the lake and was buried over centuries as the lake was drained and the city was built. Some was recovered by the Aztecs and hidden, and may have been destroyed, melted down, or scattered in the chaos of the final siege. Some made it to Spain, and some, the historian's least favorite answer, but not an impossible one, was quietly pocketed by Cortés and his lieutenants and disappeared into the colonial economy, converted into land, horses, and political power. No buried vault, no X on a map. Not because the gold isn't real, it is, but because the world doesn't usually work that way. Treasure doesn't wait neatly for discovery. It gets spent, it gets buried by time, it gets eaten by history. But then again, those gold bars they found under Mexico City in the 1980s sat there for 460 years before anyone noticed. There's a lot of city left to dig.